Hello, my name is Tyler Tuaron, and I am the founder of Tilebase. Tilebase is a decentralized data marketplace and exchange aiming to revolutionize the open data economy and machine learning ecosystem through a tokenized and computable access control layer on the blockchain. The challenges in the current data ecosystem is not only that this data is centralized and siloed in closed-off databases, but there isn't a concrete, secure way to share this data without losing privacy. An abundance of data needs to be available for the growing AI and deep learning ecosystem to thrive and develop, from smart cities, healthcare, and the financial sectors. Even the largest enterprises like Amazon are experiencing biases in their algorithms due to the lack of available data sets. The number one question that we get asked when we approach organizations about publishing their data sets on the Tilebase protocol is, what is the value and demand for our data? With Tilebase and the blockchain, we are able to tokenize these large data sets to determine the demand of this data in an open and decentralized market. Through automated market-making pools and order book exchanges, we can ultimately establish the value of this data and generate additional revenue streams to a company's existing business model. We allow data sharing in a decentralized Web3 architecture that allows data to be published, monetized, and shared transparently, securely, and even privately through our open marketplace and cloud computing functionality on the blockchain. Let's take a look. So let's start in the marketplace. Right here, we could see the data providers that have made their data sets or algorithms accessible on the Tilebase protocol. We can switch between a data set, an algorithm, whether it is downloadable or computable, right here at the top with the filters. On the top right, we can select what network that we are operating on, whether it is Ethereum, Polygon, Binance Smart Chain, or Flare networks soon to come in the near future. Let's start by showing how a data provider can publish their data set on the Tilebase protocol. Up top, we click Publish. It prompts us through this walkthrough on how to publish a data set. We first start with our access control measures. We need to determine the permissions of the data or algorithms on how it can be used and consumed on chain. We can choose to deploy a data set or an algorithm, determine what network we'd like to deploy that data set on. For this example, we're using Polygon to save on gas fees, and establish our metadata, our title, our description, website backlink, and the endpoint that we would like to access. That endpoint could be a static file in IPFS, it could be in a Google Drive file, but it also could be a Node.js file. And when we get into when we click the algorithm section, that data set can either be in Python, a custom Docker image. It's really up to you on how you want to deploy and what data set you would like to make accessible on chain. Going back to the data set, we can choose our access type, whether it is downloadable or computable. If it's downloadable, obviously that access to that data is not privately secure, and you have an ongoing access to that data determined by the timeout feature here. The timeout could be forever, 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year. And we're going to establish a data token name. So this data token is a representation of your data on the blockchain, and all the permissions are going to be written in on the smart contract back end. Establish our author, the category, and any tags associated. One other thing I want to show you before we move forward is you can also deploy your data, your API, through an AirNode gateway. This AirNode gateway was developed by API 3 and can be deployed on cloud services. Let's say we want to deploy our AirNode gateway through the Amazon Web Services. We take you to the API 3 directory and the documentation to show how to deploy the AirNode gateway and how to write your code so that API is accessible and readable on a smart contract platform. The AirNode gateway is for integrating APIs. It acts as a proxy for consumers to call on, so developers aren't calling on the API directly. Let's go back to our data set. Once we establish our metadata, provided an endpoint, and determined our access type, whether downloadable or computable, we can submit. For this example, we're going to show how to deploy a computed data set. So the data stays private and secure on-premise, and the data provider can choose which developers can access and compute against their data, all in the Tilebase protocol. All right, we'll submit, and we're prompted to the pricing screen. We can either price the data as a fixed data set or a dynamic data set. In fixed, it's just as put. It's a fixed data set that's determined by the data provider. In dynamic, the market decides. The data token is represented in an order book exchange and is bought and sold, and the price is determined by supply and demand. In this screen, we're going to initially determine the liquidity that we are going to establish in a weighted automated market making pool and determine how many access control tokens we'd like to mint. In this case, we're minting 9 access control tokens for our data set. The community fee, 0.1%, is always set. That goes to the Tilebase Foundation. Another 0.1% for the marketplace fee. And the swap fee is determined by the data provider. This we'll get into a little bit later, but the benefit of this AMM pool is you'll actually have liquidity providers, people in the ecosystem that can stake against your data set to determine if it's reliable or not, and we can ultimately underwrite the risk of the data set with the liquidity provider staking against it. Once we determine our pricing, we'll create our pricing. The final screen is publish. On the publish screen, we can see an overview of our data set, the access control data token that we mint that represents our data on the blockchain, ourselves as the author, the overview, and the liquidity pool that we just deployed on the previous screen. This now allows consumers and liquidity providers to stake and earn rewards for staking against this particular data set. These rewards are earned when the data token is bought, and the transaction fee, 0.3%, which was set by the data provider on the pricing screen, goes to the liquidity provider for providing, a curation to that data set in the marketplace. Ultimately, providing highest liquidity would represent a high popularity of that particular data set and an incentive mechanism for liquidity providers. We can see down below here our metadata as well as our DID that represents this data token, and the access type, which is computable. Okay, now we would like to add developers that can access this data token and access this data set as a whole. So right here, we can add developers, and we can add public addresses of the developers that we would like to access and compute against this data set. Okay, we've added our developers, and we'd like to publish our data set into the market. Publish. Okay, as you can see here, Iris Smart City data is now published. A liquidity pool surrounds it. Liquidity providers can stake directly on the home page, and now they can also consume the data set. Okay, we're going to click consume. Takes us to the overview page, which we had just seen previously. But the difference is, as a consumer, we need to request access to the data set. So we can now request access right in this screen. And then once the access is granted, we will be able to consume this data set. Now we're going to show you the developer portal. So now we're in the developer portal. You can see in the top left, you can establish an organization and a profile that surrounds your organization. And that'll be featured in your dashboard. So this dashboard is an overview that shows your organization and the public address that's associated with it, and all published data sets that you've recently published, any bookmarks, and this will be public. So anybody can click your dashboard and they can see your profile. You can click request here, and this is as a data provider. These are the requests that come in for any compute jobs. So as we saw in the marketplace overview, a developer has to ask for authorization and request access for a compute job against your data set. So right here you can see the request, review their account, and confirm or decline if you would like that developer to compute against your data set. And finally, we just have transaction. This is a history of any jobs that you do as a developer, whether it be a download job or a compute job. It just be a history of how you're using the Tilebase protocol. Okay, so that's Tilebase as a whole. We're really excited about the technology of the blockchain and how we can provide transparency and auditability with this open data economy on the blockchain. So these data tokens are ERC20 Ethereum based, so they can be bought, sold, and exchanged in the Ethereum ecosystem and ERC20 ecosystem, meaning that existing exchanges and existing wallets can not only exchange and hold these data tokens, but we can also see where these data tokens are being transferred on chain using Etherscan, right? So there's an auditability aspect of this that we're really excited about, and it really contributes to the whole mission of revolutionizing the open data economy. Okay, thank you very much for your time, and have a great day.